Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Chickerell. I'm the Forums and Content Manager here at the Executives Club of Chicago. I'm very excited to welcome you for our Real Estate Forum event today, which is sponsored by our good friends at JLL. We'll be talking to you this morning about the future of our workspace, and in a couple of minutes, JLL's Dan Ryan is going to begin with a short presentation discussing the findings from their recent survey about the future of office space. After that, we'll have our moderated discussion with Lauren Lowry of Finders Plus Real Estate, Amy Puzer from Convene, Elaine Schultz from Salesforce. And as audience members, we have a couple of different ways that you can interact and get involved in this conversation. So you can ask your question using the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. You can also chat with other attendees today using the chat function. And you can also use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to come on video to ask your question, and we'll help facilitate getting you unmuted and on video to ask your question to the panel. So thanks to all of you for joining us today. We're really thrilled to have this discussion. And thank you to our speakers for taking the time out of their day to share their expertise with us. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to kick things over to Dan Ryan to get us started.
Great, thanks Megan, and good morning everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning for what we think will be a great call and topic. By way of further introduction, I lead the JLL Midwest business, or I should say markets business, in the central third of the U.S., from Pittsburgh to the east, down through the Midwest, which includes Chicago. We're very proud that Chicago is our headquarters city. And then also, I work with our teams down in the South, specifically in our Texas offices. I also serve on our America's Reentry Committee, and at this point, JLL has opened 124, or 90% of our offices in the U.S., according to state, local, and CDC guidelines. So the topic that we'll be discussing this morning is the future of our workspace. Which is something many of you are working on as you develop your reentry plans for your own organizations. And we had said that, and we're looking forward to hearing from an outstanding panel that I'll introduce momentarily to share their ideas on this very timely and important topic. So in order to prime the pump, as Megan said, I'd like to share a few slides from a recent survey that JLL conducted on the future of office space. So hopefully you'll be able to see my presentation, second. Okay, there we go. Thank you. In an effort to gain a deeper understanding of this topic, during July, our JLL research group surveyed about 100 Midwest businesses across a wide range of industry to understand how companies plan to utilize office space, considering the impact of COVID. And the companies that responded represented a wide range of industries and occupied a broad amount of office space pre-COVID. And I'd like to share with you just kind of the key findings of the survey, as I said, to kind of prime the pump for our discussion. So first of all, nearly all of the offices plan to reopen by the end of the year. So 64% of those that we surveyed of offices are currently open across the Midwest. And 86% of the offices plan to be open at some capacity by the end of the year. 13% plan to open beyond 2020, so sometime next year or beyond. And 1% responded that they're planning to close the office with all employees working remote. Of the offices that plan to reopen, employees will be slow to return, which is what we're seeing already. 60% of the companies are expecting 1/2 of their employees to be working regularly in the office this year, and 40% of the companies are expecting 1/2 of their employees to be working regularly in the office sometime next year. So offices are opening, but employees will be slow to return, either by choice of organizations, flexibility that they're providing to their employees, or state and local mandates. Most companies are implementing practical protocols to keep employees safe, and with the most common in this list, I'm sure will look familiar: social distancing guidelines, enhanced cleaning procedures, limiting access to common areas, and reducing seating capacity in the office and in the conference spaces. And companies plan to bring the majority of their employees back to the office. 80% of the companies surveyed said that at least 80% of their employees will return to the office. That said, 60% of the companies that we surveyed reported that they were considering having some portion of their workforce permanently work from home. And the final finding that we had out of this survey was that most companies anticipate they'll need about the same amount of office space or a bit less when they return. So specifically, 58% of the companies said they'll need about the same amount of office space or potentially more. 19% said they will need up to 20% less, so a bit less. And 23% said they'll need more than 20% less of office space when they return. So that's just a quick summary of our survey on the future of office space, and hopefully that will frame some of the discussion points that we're going to be having going forward. And we'll be talking with the panel beyond just office space. We've got retail expertise as well, and maybe we'll throw in a little bit of industrial along the way. So with that, I'd like to introduce the panelists and have the panelists reveal on the screen. And I will stop sharing. Great. So welcome, Amy, Elaine, and Lauren. As I said, we've got a great panel this morning on this topics. So let's start out with a quick round of introductions of the panelists. Let us know who you are, if you would, what you do, and just for fun, what do you miss most about being in the office? So Amy, would you like to start?
Sure, Dan, thanks so much. My name is Amy Puzer. I'm the Global Chief Operating Officer and Chief People Officer at Convene, which is a provider of premium workplace and meetings services with a new virtual product for supporting virtual meetings. And what I miss most about being in the office is the people and the one-on-one interaction. It is really different to have, you know, a strategic discussion face-to-face versus over Zoom. So that's what I miss, and looking forward to a lot more of that in the future in person.
Great, thanks so much, Amy. Lauren?
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank you, Dan and Megan, and the Executives Club of Chicago for allowing me to participate in this discussion. I am Lauren Lowry. I am Managing Principal at FP Commercial Real Estate. We specialize in tenant representation and asset sales and management and commercial district advisory services in urban corridors in Chicago, in the greater Atlanta area, and in South Florida. And so what do I miss about the office? So I'll preface this answer by suggesting, as a real estate professional whose job it is to place clients in office and retail, I personally don't miss the office only because I'm primarily on the ground. I'm showing properties every day. Luckily, my clients, my healthcare clients, my pizza restaurants and other quick serve restaurants are needing, wanting, and miss office and retail space.
Great, Lauren, and we look forward to following up on some of those points in our discussion. Elaine, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. So Elaine Schultz, I'm the VP of Workplace Services for Salesforce. So I oversee Mayor East portfolio, which includes Chicago, but I'm based in New York. I oversee about 100 real estate professionals on my team, and we oversee everything from the operations, front desk, workplace experiences, and facilities. So I think everyone's heard we're putting a great new headquarters in Chicago, Salesforce Tower, Chicago. That will be coming in a couple years. And the main thing that I miss about being in the office is the personal interaction. So we're in a customer service business. So to me, being able to see people and help them, you could still do it, over Zoom or remotely, but just that interaction with everyone face to face is what I miss the most.
Great, Elaine, thank you. And thanks for the introductions. And let me add, as we, being in the commercial real estate business focused area, the most common elements that we hear from people and companies that are lacking while working remote, we call them the 4 C's: creation, collaboration, communication, and culture. Difficult attributes to foster remote. While the work from home scenario has worked very well in many cases, there's still many things that we need to be together to be able to accomplish. So with that, let's begin with a broad question before we get into your specific expertise and perspectives. As you think about the COVID impact on the future design, development, and acquisition of workspaces that could be office or retail, what do you think will be the biggest changes we're going to see in those workspaces in terms of look and function over the next few years? Lauren, can we start with you?
Sure. So, COVID is going to impact every real estate sector. I would say that keep in mind that the social unrest in Chicago and throughout the United States will also transform urban policy. It will also transform the design in both security and safety. That should also be top of mind. So COVID combined with all the other things happening in this country are going to really impact the design of stores and the future of stores generally. But I would say the restaurant sector really has had the most rapid pivot, and I think some of the most successful ideas that we should think about as examples. So if you think about restaurants right now, they have successfully perfected the activation of outdoor spaces across the board. They have perfected contactless delivery and curbside. And there's not a real estate sector right now that really, at least retail, shouldn't want some kind of drive-through. If you could just drive through anything and shove it out the window, you could sell anything, So I think everyone would want a drive-through right now. So when you think about restaurants, you think about food service, those are some of the ideas that I think are also going to transform how these spaces are going to be built in the future. The other thing that I want us to really think about is sort of geo fencing. So geo fencing, when you think about how retailers are using this technology to know who their clients are, when they order, what they order, when they order, this is critically important, I believe, to think about for retailers to efficiently redesign their stores, both interior and exterior.
Great, Lauren, and we really look forward to following up with you to talk and take a further dive into what you're seeing in retail. So, Elaine, what are your thoughts on what changes you think we'll see in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think for us, Salesforce at its heart is a customer relationship company. So that's the whole base of our product, is helping every company do the best they can. So for us, it's really making sure that we're continuing to bring our culture into our offices, even though they're not open right now. We are trying to change over to digital events. So our big conference Dreamforce, it went to a digital event this year. So for us, we're trying to keep the culture, and what we anticipate is when we get back into the offices, that's what everyone is looking for. So we want to make sure that our teams come in and they still feel that connection. So we anticipate it being different though. So when people start to come back in, we don't anticipate the 4 to 5 day work week that many people did. We anticipate that it's going to be more team-based. So when do teams need to come in? When do they need to collaborate? What are those important meetings? And then there's going to be some flexibility to maybe work from home or to do some client meetings, whatever it is that they need. So we think it's going to be a different world, but one where the core connection is that everyone's coming together still to connect. So that's what we think is the important thing. And that's what our employees are looking for. They want to come back in, they want to connect. So it's finding those new ways to make that happen safely. So we've come up with a whole plan on how we're going to reopen our offices to make sure that we can provide that to our employees. So I think for us, it's how are we safely bringing our employees back in so that we can keep our culture, keep that connection, keep the collaboration going. So everything changes daily and we're keeping up with that as well. And luckily the company is very innovative. We've come up with some great ideas. Work.com is one of our platforms that we're using to bring everyone back in safely. We've already opened up 30 offices across our global portfolio. So I think for us, it's how do we make those connections and keep it and do it in a safe manner.
Great, Elaine, thanks. And we'll go deeper into some of those areas in a moment with you. Amy, please, what do you think will be, you see as some of the big changes going forward?
Well, Dan, I think consistent with what your data showed to us, you know, the future of work is really hybrid. It's a combination of, you know, all of the warm, collaborative in-office work that's always happened in the country, and then support for work at home or any other place where work happens, whether it be home, a satellite office, a flex space like a Convene, a cafe, and really it's technology and a thoughtfully designed experience that needs to connect the two together so that work can be supported wherever it happens, however it happens, because as Lauren points out, we're in a time of instability. It's not just COVID, it's social unrest, it's natural disasters, and I think unfortunately, I hate to sound doomsday, but we just need to be prepared for ambiguity and we need to be prepared to support work wherever it needs to happen. That's really what we've been about at Convene, and that's our vision for the future, is to support this hybrid work model so that people can remain productive no matter what's going on. And productive for us means not just, you know, they're meeting their metrics, but really they're engaged, they're collaborative, communication is transparent, and people are connected to one another. That's really what's critical. We don't see real estate ever going away, or to what your data showed, becoming less important or less relevant. I mean, we just saw, you know, Amazon and Facebook take big leases in New York. Twitter is going completely remote, but they're keeping all of their offices open to allow for that flexibility. So space is always going to be essential. We believe that at Convene because there's no substitute. At the same time, we really have to move to this hybrid model, and a model where the in-office moments and the at-home moments are thoughtfully designed and choreographed, and connection between them is provided by technology and by human support. And that's really what we're trying to do, you know, at Convene. And that's what we think progressive organizations are doing and will do. Organizations founded within the next, let's say, 1 to 5 years, we believe are going to adopt the hybrid model from the get-go.
Great, thanks, Amy. We're seeing a lot about that concept, and appreciate you also bringing up technology, which is a critical component to making that hybrid model work as well. So let's dive a little bit deeper with each of you into your expertise areas. So Lauren, back to you. Let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing in retail space. And a lot of people who work in retail in some cases didn't have the option of working from home. And many retail businesses had to quickly pivot and come up with safe ways to keep their retail establishments open. And now you've got the emergence of e-commerce, almost as if COVID has accelerated online sales. And so with all of that, what long-term impact do you see on this having in the future development and build out of retail space, and what happens to brick and mortar? You're on mute, Lauren.
Sorry about that. So clearly grocery and hardware store workers and medical workers and real estate professionals like myself kept working, literally risking lives to keep Chicago going, to keep America moving forward. You know, I always love when I'm on discussions like this and we're asked to be clairvoyant, which is what we're all, you know, attempting to do today. But I always look back at what I said in the future, and it scares me a little bit. So every time I'm a little concerned about the future of brick and mortar and the future of office spaces, and frankly, the future of our professions, we receive some positive news. News changes so rapidly in today's world. Amy mentioned already, there's positive news. Facebook, 2 million square feet of spaces throughout New York and other cities in America. Amazon just picked up under 1 million square feet in New York and other core cities in the United States. Medical professionals are expanding. New concepts are coming online all the time. Keep in mind, in Illinois, marijuana dispensaries are hopefully going to come online in the state of Illinois sometime soon. And they're going to be ancillary businesses that will support those. So I expect brick and mortar to continue to move forward. Future development might be slower. Absorption might be a little bit slower. But I expect brick and mortar to rebound and do what's always done.
Yeah, it's interesting, Lauren. I'm curious if you're seeing any of this, but there appears to be an intersection between vacant retail and the need to find more fulfillment or warehouse space to, especially in urban areas. Maybe it's what we call the last mile distribution area for e-commerce. Are you seeing any of that? And if you are, do you expect that to continue?
Well, I expect, you know, it has to stop at some point, honestly, I believe. Amazon has several new distribution centers here, Target. I worked on the project in Markham where we assembled 50, you know, parcels to create their distribution center. However, you know, I think it would be great if larger companies could somehow absorb the thousands and thousands of vacant square feet in some of these urban corridors. It'd be great, but it's just not going to happen. We have to do more. We have to figure out more. I think has to be a lot more policy demands on making sure some of these vacant retail spaces are filled. But we're going to see that in the central business district as well. I mean, so much is closed, so much will not reopen. We're going to have to be as creative as possible to tackle some of these vacancies. There is some good news, however. Again, you have a lot of companies expanding. There's going to be some great opportunities when you think about restaurants expanding. If they're surviving, they may expand to some of those vacant storefronts, some of those vacant former restaurants. So there's some hope for sure.
Great, awesome, Lauren. And especially as you think about, you hear some of the larger companies and doubling and tripling of their online sales. Is that something that's going to peak, continue, or drop? We'll see. Elaine, let's go on to you. You had mentioned the great office space that Salesforce is building out in Chicago in the River North area and the plans for expansion there. And even amid the lockdown, construction was able to continue as an essential service on the building going forward. Can you tell us a little bit about overall the Salesforce real estate philosophy and what impact the pandemic might have on future decisions for office space and design?
Absolutely. So I'll start by just explaining Salesforce's philosophy when it comes to real estate. So we don't just look at it as physical space where employees get together. It's the physical embodiment of our culture. So for us, we look at it and we don't look to say, let's bring in a very corporate feel. We want it to feel more residential and more like home. So for us, we started our Salesforce design back in 2016. And this was basically, how are we going to bring in the best elements for our employees? So one of the things we looked at is we made sure that all of the conference rooms and offices, they're on the interior of the core. So all of our employees are up against the windows. They get the best natural light coming in. We also wanted to make sure that when people came in, it was that welcoming feel. So our desks are natural wood. We have lots of plants around, not only just for the complement of feeling good about seeing something in productivity, for our employees. You get that boost of oxygen that gets released from the plants. So we look at it holistically from a well-being as well as how can we best serve our employees. So additionally, when it comes to our signature towers, which Salesforce Tower Chicago will be one of, we take the top floor of the building, and instead of making it a suite for the executives, which they're rarely in, we turn that into what we call our Ohana floor. And our Ohana floor is a large open space, and it is for our employees, our guests, our clients, and on nights and weekends, it's available to nonprofit organizations to use to help their fundraising efforts. So we have these floors currently open in 4 of our locations: San Francisco, New York, Indy, and London. And when Salesforce Chicago opens, we'll be opening it up there. So to date, we have raised over $15 million for nonprofits to be able to use the space for free. So again, for us, it's all about bringing people together in the space. Now, of course, COVID happened, and we immediately had to shut down our offices, as many companies did. But for us, we knew once the shutdown happened, one of the first things we realized right after that was, how are we going to reopen all of these locations? So for us, it wasn't oh, let's wait a month. I think within the first 2 weeks of our shutdown, we already started on what do we need to do. So for us, we realized we needed a lot of data to make sure that we were going to make the best decisions for our employees. So again, we gathered the best and brightest from the company. We also brought in outside health experts and counsel. And we said, okay, how are we going to make sure that we can, city by city, do the right thing and get our employees back in safely? So with that, we built work.com using our technology so that we have a platform to make sure that we can open our offices when the time is right. And we're looking at that constantly for our guidance. Additionally, as we think about what the new workplace will be, we're looking at what's going to be the right complements for when employees come back in. So we're being very thoughtful. So one of the things we're thinking about is, right now, conference rooms, you'll have limited capability to go in. So something that you used to be able to sit 30 people in with social distancing, you really can't. So what are some other ways that we can bring that meeting area together, maybe not within the confines of a conference room, but can you do it a little bit out in the open? So this way you can gather more people still in a safe way to do it and get that collaboration that you need. So we're looking at from all aspects of how are we making sure we're doing everything safely, but looking at to what changes might we need to make, because the future of the workplace is going to change a little bit from all of this.
Yes, for sure, Elaine. Elaine, can you talk a little bit more about Salesforce, large technology company? There's been some big announcements by others, Google, Facebook, others, about the timing of reentry for their workforce. Salesforce had an announcement last week. Can you let us know, give us a little bit more insight on that, and what does that really mean?
Okay, so yes, we just recently announced that our employees can choose to work from home through the end of July of next year, 2021. So, and the basis for that is there's a lot of employees who either have children at home that they need to figure out their schooling and education. Others may be taking care of other family members, and there might be some health concerns for others about coming back to the space. So we wanted to make sure that our employees had the flexibility to do what's right and plan forward for themselves. So again, if someone needs to work from home or wants to work from home, they have that option till the end of July of next year. With that though, we will be opening offices before that, again, if it's safe and we're ready to do so. We've already opened over 30 offices worldwide, and we will be, we're evaluating the US on a day-to-day basis. So we will start to see offices open up before that, but we're providing the flexibility for our employees to be able to do the best thing to take care of their family.
Yes, great, Elaine, that's helpful. And, our experience has been that as offices slowly reopen and we welcome employees back, there is a difference in the location of the office. There are different challenges created by opening in a big urban environment, whether it's reliance on public transportation or elevator access and so on, versus a 5-story suburban building where people can drive and park and so forth. So different challenges that need to be addressed. But thank you very much, Elaine. Amy, let's move on to you. Certainly an interesting time to be in a leadership role as you are at Convene. You've had some great success leading up to the slowdown in co-working and event space. We've seen beautiful spaces and recently opened in Chicago as well from Convene. What has the crisis been like for your team, and what does success look like in the foreseeable future for Convene?
Yeah, it's been an incredibly challenging time at Convene, as I think it has for most companies. And near the beginning of the crisis, we were in a situation where we shut down our locations ahead of the stay-at-home orders. We were really incredibly concerned about the health and safety of our members and also our employees. Right after that, like Elaine and everyone, we thought to ourselves, okay, what do we need to do to be able to reopen our spaces safely? That was the first challenge, and went through a very rigorous process to come up with really what has become industry-leading operating standards for COVID protocols. So on the survey that you did, when you looked at all the different protocols that companies are putting in place, Convene has put in place every single one of them and more, just to really guarantee not just the physical safety of our members and our employees and other constituents, but also the psychological safety at this time, which we think is honestly of equal importance. So that was the first thing we did, and we got it blessed by Ron Klain, Obama's Ebola advisor, and our partners at Eden Health. So we did that, but then we said, okay, our physical business is going to be compromised for a while. We do need our location shut down. We don't know how long they'll be shut down for. What else can we do? If Convene is a company that's really about supporting work, no matter where it happens, what happens when work happens at home or at a cafe or somewhere else? How does Convene really meet the employee, the member, where they are to support work no matter where it's happening? And so we very quickly got together as a team and came up with a number of new products, one of which is a virtual meetings product. So we can support virtual meetings of all types, from a panel discussion like this to a board meeting to a 5,000 person meeting. It can be either completely virtual, or it also can be hybrid with a small group on site, properly socially distanced, and then a larger group or number of attendees virtually. And I think the difference in our platform versus Zoom, as we've experienced this morning, is we have humans behind the technology. So our AV and technology professionals are there helping you to plan the event and plan the content. And then they're there through the execution of the event, making sure internet connections don't go down and the audience is engaged with Q&A and chat and breakout rooms, and then post-production support so that, you know, you can give your meeting a highly produced version of your meeting out to attendees or others. So that was our real focus, was one, on making sure the physical space was safe when we came back, and then two, spinning up the virtual meetings product, making it hybrid as well so that there's equal interaction at home, at a cafe, or in person. And then working on our digital transformation and technology solutions to support the work across the spectrum, whether it's a virtual meeting or it's an at-home worker who needs to be engaged. All of that is what we've been focused on. And we have simultaneously reopened all of our physical workplace locations, as you mentioned, including some of our beautiful spaces in Chicago. So we just opened 333 North Green with our partners at Sterling Bay. It has meetings, it has workplace, it has amenities, it even has a secret room that you can book for meetings. We're only seeing about 10 to 15% utilization right now. We expect that that's going to spike after Labor Day, which is of course consistent with, again, what your data was saying. We're super excited to be opening Willis Tower in Chicago, which is actually going to be one of our largest meetings and events locations. And then, you know, we're focused on continuing to iterate on the virtual and hybrid experience and the at-home experience and really create the technology that makes it seamless. So the world becomes a world where, you know, you can be at home as an employee, do your COVID screening through our workplace app, do your temperature checking, make sure that you're safe and healthy. If you're not, you can get care through our partnership with Eden. Then you're in a Convene location having amazing food. Then maybe you're bouncing to a virtual meeting somewhere else that's supported by Convene. We really want to support work wherever it's happening. And so that's what we've been focused on in this time.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And as you think about what we've touched on, a bit of a backlog and building desire for, in an appropriate way and safe way, groups to begin to come back together to collaborate and meet. Are you beginning to see some buildup of backlog or requests for meeting space that you weren't maybe a month ago?
That's a great question. So Chicago is actually the place where there's the most interest right now, and a lot of support for small meetings. And luckily, some of our bigger spaces like Willis can accommodate even larger meetings because our spaces were designed to be about 20% bigger than most competitors anyway. So we've been able to implement the 6-foot social distancing requirements and de-densify our spaces, but still be able to hold larger groups, you know, depending on the regulations of different municipalities. But we've seen a lot of demand for meetings. People are still booking physical meetings and hybrid meetings through Convene really across the country in all of our locations. So for us, the end of 2020 into 2021 looks quite robust between the combination of the virtual meetings, the physical meetings, and then the hybrid meetings, as well as our workplace locations. There's been quite a bit of interest, and I think it's because a Convene workplace location does support that flexibility that we talked about. So, you know, if you're a big company, you're not exactly sure where you're going with space, or you need a little satellite space, Convene can provide that. Moreover, you know that the space is safe, that it will be engaging for employees, and it will be a great experience for employees and members and customers at your company. So I think there's a lot of appetite. We're very optimistic about for the business and the industry, over the course of this year and into the beginning of 21.
Thanks, Amy. I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your line. It might just be my computer, but thank you for that. We certainly got 99% of it. We're getting some great questions that are coming in, and let me remind everyone, if you have a question in our last 15 minutes or so, please feel free to ask them virtually. I do want to ask the group, a question came in. Due to COVID, there's been much talk about increase in interest in suburban residential real estate. What does this mean for retail and office space in the suburbs? Lauren, you want to kick that one off?
For sure. Well, I currently represent Butterfield Plaza. It's on Bulmer Road and Kedzie, and in between Kedzie and Governor's Highway in Olympia Fields, Illinois, in the suburbs. And we have a tremendous amount of interest. New restaurants, new service providers, insurance, you name it. People are interested. I work a lot with a lot of the suburban policymakers, and they are really they are on fire right now. The south suburbs and the suburban corridors generally are on fire. And it is a positive for our vacant retail spaces and office spaces. Some of the suburban corridors were suffering a bit in years past with vibrancy, with interest. And now that the consumer is looking to live in larger spaces with outdoor possibilities, the suburbs is really taking, I think, persevering in sort of this climate. So I'm really optimistic about, what's happening in the suburbs, working on quite a few different projects, again, representing different centers, working on market studies for a lot of the policymakers in the corridor, really to attack the new business that's going to be coming in.
Yeah, that's great, Lauren. And we're also seeing that, or at least conversations going on, particularly if you think about a distributed model in a real estate footprint to give employees that flexibility that we're talking about that was mentioned earlier. Elaine, can you talk about the Salesforce view when you have open locations or look to the future? How do you compare urban to suburban?
Great, thanks, Dan. So for us, we've always been in the heart of the cities. So for us, we purposely want to be in the cities, and our strategy has been, instead of building a cafeteria in our offices, we want the employees to go out and support the local restaurants and the local community there. So that's our strategy, and as with Salesforce Tower Chicago coming, we will continue to go with that. So, but again, with everything changing, real estate is constantly evolving, and we're always looking at our strategy and what makes the most sense. So for us, we're an urban-based company, but we'll look at the future and see where it goes. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our employees. Yeah,
great. And Amy, as you think about the Convene footprint today or in the future, what's the urban-suburban thinking?
So historically, we've been located in, the urban centers of the country: New York, Washington, Chicago, LA, and Boston, Philly, and then London. And we are evaluating some suburban locations right now because we think there's going to be a lot of appetite. Unfortunately, whether it's temporary or permanent, there's been an exodus to the suburbs, certainly out in New York and some other places. So again, if you think about Convene's vision as enabling work wherever it happens, we're looking at that as part of our strategy going forward. We will never leave urban locations because we think there's huge vibrancy and opportunity there, but we may augment over time.
Oh, great. Thanks, Amy. Another great question came in. It's about culture. How do you envision acculturating new employees during this time, and how do those employees learn and embrace company culture?
That's a great question. We've already been doing some remote onboarding classes. So our usual onboarding is a couple of weeks, not full days, half days. And we have translated that to an online forum, using our virtual meetings platform. So it's still a classroom, and the training is happening. We've done, more engagement on the social aspects. So, trivia contests and that kind of thing. And then as leaders in the company, we continue some of our cultural traditions, like, grit cards and gratitude cards. We write handwritten notes to employees and new employees to sort of see them and thank them and recognize them. So we've continued to do that. That being said, I will be very excited to welcome our first onboarded class physically very soon.
Yeah, great. Elaine?
Yes. So again, culture is so important to Salesforce. We've been very lucky to be named one of the best workplaces in Chicago a couple years in a row. So for us, because we've always had a remote population, we've always had that virtual ability to make sure that people are feeling connected to the company. So while we always had in-person orientation, we also had virtual orientations, and we've continued to do that. One of the best things we've seen, though, is with our employees, one of our main focuses is the Salesforce 1-1-1 model. So we donate 1% of our profits, 1% of our product, and 1% of our employees' time to nonprofits, and that's been built in from day one. And it was always such a very in-person event. So teams would get together and go do things, clean up parks and rivers. But what we have seen is an amazing shift in our employees turning to this virtually. So we use our internal chatter groups, and you'll see people posting all the time, virtual VTO, or let's support a local restaurant or a local business that's, struggling right now. So for us, it's already is ingrained into our culture to come together, and we're just utilizing fully now all of our platforms for all of the employees, instead of having that hybrid mix of some being remote and some being in person.
Yes. We saw that as well, just some of those similar experiences. Certainly, onboarding is a challenge in a remote environment when new employees and colleagues come on board. We also, quite frankly, had a interesting challenge during our internship program, where we kept it in place, but it went all virtual. So we certainly wanted to help those students and stick with our commitment of holding our program, but it was done virtually. We think that the students got a lot out of it, but it was not interactive in the office as it has been in the past. Lauren, what's your perspective on the cultural question, particularly as it relates to retail?
So I think in retail, it's probably a lot easier to create, a type of culture. I think, certainly in retail, there's smaller operations. I think the employees and staff have to work more closely together. Certainly during this time, I think they're sort of building more family types of relationships, because to stay open in this arena with so many things happening, they have to sort of work more closely together. There's certainly fewer and fewer employees, unfortunately, at this time. But I believe the culture in retail and retailers is a little different. I think they can bond together a little bit differently than I think in years past. They have to work more closely together.
Yes, thanks, Lauren. A couple other terrific questions coming in, and we'll have time for a couple of more before we close our session. But will some cities be better off than others as COVID fears dissipate? Will less dense cities, as an example, have an easier time in attracting tenants both office and retail. Anyone have a view on that?
Hey, Dan, so I take that. So I think what we're doing is, again, using our work.com tool is we're looking at what's going on in our city. So we're tracking it very closely. So one of the benefits is we saw that we needed data, our customers needed data, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide that. And that's where we created our work.com platform. And what that allows is everyone to bring in all of the information so you can make those decisions. And we meet, twice a week, and we're constantly looking at the data coming in about, the number of cases in a particular city, what's the capacity of the healthcare system. So we're using that to make those decisions. So being from New York, 4 months ago, probably everyone would have guessed we would be one of the last cities to open back up. But now when you look at New York today, we're in one of the better situations. So again, we need that information to look. And I think the cities, each city is taking a different approach, and you'll see, based upon how the cases go, what cities may or may not open faster than others.
Great, thank you.
I agree with that. And I would also add in our conversations with customers, particularly enterprise, sort of Fortune 100 type customers, one of the things that's been most critical in supporting the ability to reopen beyond what's happening with COVID and what the municipality is saying is public transportation and the transportation infrastructure in general. I think particularly when you're talking about some of the large entities, employees feel very confident that their workplace will be appropriately handled, cleaned. They feel comfortable about that. They feel comfortable about their home. They feel less comfortable about how they get back and forth and what they're exposed to in the process. So I think that's sort of the last mile to figure out is really the transport element.
Great. Let me move on to one final question before we close out. This has to do with design, space design. And that is, we talked a little bit about changes in space design, but how much, and more specifically, what do you anticipate being different in space design going forward? And do you expect that to be a permanent change in space design? Lauren, and certainly that applies to retail as well. You want to kick this one off?
Sure. I think, again, when it comes to retail, certainly in the central business district, you're going to, again, find some policies that are going to create some change as it pertains to, again, as I mentioned, security and safety. Certainly, I think we're going to find the need in retail to truly activate these outdoor spaces in unique ways and more unique ways than they ever have before. These are going to be long-lasting changes. I don't believe that COVID is going to disappear. There's still going to be fears out there. So how we are, sort of really recreating the consumer's ability to pick things up very quickly from the outside, for the queue to be quick and fast, we're going to have to plan for that. I always like to think about sort of when there were initial first there were single drive-throughs, and then all of a sudden there were double drive-throughs. We're going to see just unbelievable transformations in how these outdoor spaces are going to be used in the future. And I believe that is in every real estate sector. We're going to have to make some improvements in that way. I also have some thoughts, my own personal thoughts about sort of interior design changes as it pertains to queues. Certainly in cold weather climates like Chicago, you can't always activate outdoors. How are we going to pivot in this upcoming season? Hopefully it'll stay 90 degrees in Chicago for the rest of the year. I doubt it. But we're going to have to think about those. I haven't figured out all of those answers yet. My clients are looking to me for some ideas as well. And so I'm thinking about how we tackle that as we engage in these leases for 2021 and 22.
Great discussion. And we can continue for a long time, but unfortunately, we're going to have to move to closing remarks here. So I want to thank Lauren, Elaine, and Amy for this great discussion this morning. And I'd like to introduce Meredith O'Connor for closing remarks. Meredith is a colleague of mine, Executive Managing Director at JLL, and Meredith chairs the Real Estate Committee at the Executive Club. So welcome, Meredith.
Thank you, Dan. And what a productive discussion we just heard. Please join me in a virtual round of applause for our fantastic panel. So all of us in the real estate industry are facing an unprecedented amount of uncertainty in the market and an unknown future ahead. Thought leadership from experts like today's is paramount in navigating our future. And I hope everyone will be able to make more informed decisions just from listening to our discussion today. So please please help us by looking at the Executives Club website for more upcoming events. We have one next week on September 1st, which is a discussion with Chicago's Chief Marketing Officers, and which is about navigating crisis and brand integrity. So you can find it on www.executivesclub.org, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you.
Great, thanks Meredith, and it was enjoyable starting the day, having a cup of coffee with everyone, and please enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.